And joining me now to discuss is Christopher Bedford, senior editor at the Federalist and co-founder of Right Forward. Chris, welcome back. Always great to see you. Let's talk a little bit more about these voting rights bills and why do you think Democrats are so eager to get them passed this week?
I think part of what we're seeing from the Democrats right now is just some election posturing, them trying to create an image they can push now in the elections coming forward and put themselves on the side of Martin Luther King, as they're going to do. You're going to see President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris going down to Georgia this week, where they're going to visit the tomb of Martin Luther King. They're going to visit the church that he preached at. They're going to go to a lot of the different places where the segregation battle was. And you can see Chuck Schumer there earlier just laying this out and saying this is a battle against segregation. Of course, that has no basis in fact at all, but it is politicking. It's the kind of thing that you can kind of expect from these folks pushing forward. My thing is, I don't think that they've got the votes to do this unless they can get Manchin and Sinema on board, which they do not have for getting rid of the filibuster. They might not have the votes to do this. So it's probably just a lot of party posturing to try and get some wins on the board for Democrats to run on in the midterms.
You know, that said, Chris, talk to us about the consequences of the federal government having influence over states in their elections.
Well, we've seen so far in the last election that it was basically the most breakdowns of barriers that we've ever had in this country to protecting the integrity of elections. We're at a dangerous place right now in this country where neither Democrats nor Republicans seem to trust the election results and are always are quick to anger when the elections don't go their way. The federal government's meddling, the federal government making the election day longer and longer and longer, getting more involved. That does not bode well for the trust of the American people already are losing in these elections. It's been something they've been trying to do, and they've had a lot of successes over the past couple of years. But I think the chaos that we saw after the 2020 election should make folks want to think twice about meddling further and further and breaking down barriers to voting like they have been in New York City and other places.
Yeah, speaking of New York, I want to talk about that. The new mayor, Eric Adams, has green-lighted a bill allowing non-citizens who have green cards and work permits to vote in municipal elections as long as they have been living in the city for 30 days. Your thoughts on this, Chris?
I think Jake Tapper was right. I rarely agree with him, but when he challenged the mayor on CNN saying this just makes a mockery of a citizenry. What exactly is it to be a U.S. citizen? What is the privilege? It comes with understanding our system of government, having been either raised here or having waited in line and gone through those exams, taking an oath of allegiance to the United States, and then being able to have a voice in how we govern ourselves. It's a very strange idea that people from other countries should have a say in what the people in this country govern themselves. It's one of the reasons we fought the American Revolution, the main reason we fought the American Revolution. And it just makes a mockery of the entire process. And those people who are either born here and are citizens, or those people who waited in line and legally became citizens.
Chris, I'm going to turn now to something that Justice Sotomayor said on Friday that really landed her in a bit of hot water. She claimed that more than 100,000 children were in the hospital with COVID, many of them on ventilators. Now, Sunday, while appearing on TV, CDC Director Rochelle Walensky corrected her, saying there were less than 3,500 children in the hospital with the virus. How do you think that Justice Sotomayor got those numbers so wrong? And let's talk about the danger in that.
I think it's from the massive disinformation campaign or the panic that we've been seeing from a lot of folks in the corporate media and a lot of politicians that are about this. I mean, here in Washington, D.C., where deaths are down, where COVID is up, but deaths are down, the hospitalizations related to because of COVID are not impactful. We're seeing more and more restrictions against us anyways because of the panic that's being pushed by folks. When I saw the amount of falsehoods that came out of some of the Supreme Court justices' mouths relating to COVID, what that made me think about was if Supreme Court justices believe this stuff, believe these things which are demonstrably not true, then how difficult is it going to be to calm down the average voter who doesn't spend their entire life trying to just think these things over and understand the facts like a Supreme Court justice does? It made me worry for the amount of disinformation that's already set in and caused this panic in the first place.
All right, before I let you go, I want to talk about your latest column. You wrote about how big tech has become more bold in its censorship after Twitter banned former President Donald Trump last year. Talk to us more about that.
Well, we just had this past weekend was the anniversary of big tech deciding that the sitting president of the United States was no longer allowed to speak to his 90 million followers, as well as ripping out the internet infrastructure for Parler, just an alternative and a competitor to them. The year before that, we'd seen them censor the New York Post for embarrassing the Democratic candidate. And now we've seen them going after Christian activists in Texas to deplatform them. The big tech at one point in this country stood for decentralization, the sharing of information, bringing communities together. But for years and years now, and increasingly, they've just been an arm of the left who stand much more for control, much more for censorship. And Americans ought to wake up. There's a new economy forming, which I've been working on with Right Forge and a lot of other folks who are starting this to try and push back against this. But Americans should wake up. It's not going to get better with big tech. It's going to continue to get worse.
All right, Chris, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much for your time. Always appreciate it.
Thank you.